Turns out the crappy Chinese stator wasn't crappy. The failure was completely my fault. So when we put it together, I'll show you how to not be a dumbass like me and not screw up your stator. I ordered my new stator, but I didn't get it yet. I would highly recommend pulling your flywheel cover off and looking at your stator before you order it. When you start looking for stators, there's just tons of different ones. I mean, there are a lot of wire configurations. This one's got 4 wires here, not 3 like ours. And I say ours, but you might have 4 wires. This one's got 3 wires, and it's got the 2 wires coming out, but look how many poles it has. This might be a good time to upgrade to a stator with more poles on it, but we really don't even know how many poles we have till we pull it apart and look at it. Don't want to delay showing you how to put this thing on. Holiday weekend, no telling when that thing will show up. I'm going to use the old stator to do the install video. Here we go. Let's change this stator. I'm going to pull off this white cover here, get it out of the way. Yours will be black unless you painted it like I did. And we're going to pull this red fan off, or white if it's a 150. And there's your flywheel. That's the hard part to get off. This is 14 millimeters. It connects right to the crankshaft, and it is tight. This gun might get it off, but probably won't. It did. That's amazing. So if it doesn't get it off, you need a compressed air impact driver, or you may not have any impact driver. So if you have regular hand tools and you try to remove this, what happens is we try to spin it counterclockwise. We're just spinning the engine around, and you no way can hold that with your hand tight enough to get that bolt off. They make this tool here. It looks like that. You can find them on AliExpress, Amazon, eBay. They're super cheap. It works on your clutch also on the other side. So here's that tool on Temu, $7.97. And it holds several things. Here you can see they're holding a variator with it. They've got that on wrong. These little thin pins should go in those 2 holes in the variator. But here it is holding the clutch. And then the main purpose is to hold the flywheel on the other side. I wish they don't show that picture. Yeah, they're cheap, readily available. So it's got the 2 big ends and the littler ends for the clutch side. Flip it where the big ends go in. It goes in these 2 holes right here. So you want to line that up so you can fit it in the 2 holes and hold it. Now we can hold that flywheel with one hand. We can loosen this nut with the other hand, and it is tight. So you may want a 1/2-inch drive wrench or the good old cheater bar. And let that run over and just rest against that bolt right there. That was tight. Once it loosens up, it'll spin right off. The next problem is getting this flywheel off. Don't try the trick of using a steering wheel puller and putting it on there and threading into these holes right there. It will bend this steering wheel puller. It will strip those threads out. Don't try to use your adjustable pickle tools or adjustable gear pullers, because what we don't want to do, inside this flywheel, there's magnets going around here. We don't want to grab this from behind and crack those magnets, because then we got to buy a whole new flywheel. So we need the right tool. Before you do this job, order the right tool. It's a flywheel puller. There are a lot of different flywheel pullers, so make sure you get the one that specifically says GY6, QMB 139, 50, and 150. Here's the flywheel puller. Threads in to the inner threads on your flywheel or Magneto. 27 millimeters. I have no idea how many millimeters this thing is, but it does say 50cc, 150, 125 Magneto wheel puller. The puller has 2 different size threads on it. I'm guessing this one's for the 150. I've never used that side yet. I've never taken a 150 stator off. And this can thread in either side and push against the crankshaft. You want to make sure it's not in so far it blocks these threads from engaging into the flywheel. You want to get those threads as far in as you can. And we can hold it in place with. There we go. That easy. And the magnets will hold it from falling off on you. There it is. Here's the inside of the Magneto cover, the magnet. I've always said when something fails, go back to the last thing you did. Now the last thing I did was put this fan on. That seems pretty benign, but this is the last thing I did before this bike failed. Let's look when I put that fan on, what I did wrong. Look at the bolts I was using to hold that fan on. You see a problem with one of them? Yeah, one of them's too long. I put the wrong bolt in that fan. So, completely my fault, last thing I touched, as always. And let's look at the stator. Yeah, the problem should be obvious. There's where that long cut the stator wires. It didn't quite cut through this one, so it was still charging, but it definitely cut through these. And these ones with the wraps on them are supposed to be the ones that give the CDI power. So there you have it, my own fault. I'm pretty good about laying all my bolts out in the order they came out and grouped together. I'm not sure how I made that mistake, but I do have some surveillance cam from my garage security system. Let me check that. You don't want to lose that. That's your keyway. You usually stay in there pretty tight, but make sure that doesn't fall off and get lost. That lines the slot up inside the rotor, and without that slot being lined up, your timing's not going to be on. There's the part I need, and it's a good thing I looked at it because I would have ordered one with the single tape. 2, 4, 6, 8. I thought it was a 6-pole stator, but it's an 8-pole stator. Yeah, there's no repairing that. This is the back side. You can see no wires soldered on here. This is the side you should be looking at, the outside, when you put it on. You see one of these has a grounding post on it. That's so the bolt grounds this centerpiece to the frame. And when I took it off, that piece was up, so we'll put it in the same way. This rubber piece slides into that slot right there. I like to put that in first before I even tighten the stator. You run the wire. When I took it off, it was actually just hanging down behind the trigger like that. Go ahead and tighten the stator down. Here, I'm going to put this on before I put the flywheel on. I just find it easier to get to. And I'm going to go ahead and tighten that down. And right now you're thinking, what the hell? What about that critical gap that you got to measure in there? We're going to talk about that. The flywheel has a keyed slot in it, and it has a key up here. You want to make sure your key's in place. We're going to slide this on there. This is what's going to control our ignition timing. So make sure that slot and that key are lined up. You'll definitely feel it slide on there when it happens. And then you can look in there and verify it. You can actually see the key. The book shows a washer right there. This is a flange nut. Mine did not have a washer in there. This thing goes to 40 Newton meters. That's 29.5 foot-pounds. That's 354 inch-pounds. Your torque wrench, this 3/8 drive, is not even going to go that high. It's going to stop at 29 Newton meters and looks like 250 inch-pounds. Half-inch drive torque wrench, you're probably not going to have this size. Most people don't. This one goes up to 150 foot-pounds. This is a dangerous tool to use. You can really screw some stuff up with it. So I've got it set to 29 foot-pounds, but we're going to find out if we don't have one of these how tight that is. 3/8 drive, 14 millimeter wrench, and I'm going to tighten it with that. Same as before, this thing's going to move, so we got to have something to hold it with. I'm going to tighten it as tight as I can with this. Let's see how close I was. It probably only moved a 1/16 of a turn. Just as tight as you can get it with this, should work. I've loosened it back up. We're going to see if the impact gun tightens it to the right tightness. Yep. The impact gun did a good job. So you don't need that big torque wrench. The book will give no gap measurement for this right here. And that's really odd because it's a big discussion on the internet. So when the reluctor part comes around and hits it, there's supposed to be a certain distance of gap. That's what we've all been taught between there. The internet will say anywhere from 0.010 inches to 0.020 inches, so 1 thousandths to 20 thousandths. Some guys will use that as a tuning tool, up to 30 thousandths, things like that. They talk about getting better spark, hotter spark, and that making a difference. Don't get confused with this. This is just a trigger. This is on or off. It either works or it doesn't. This has no effect on how hot your spark is. Remember, our spark is coming from the exciter coil going right to the CDI. This just tells it to release it. When they talk about that, some coils look like this. And these coils bolt to the outside of your flywheel like that. The flywheel has magnets in it. As that magnet passes this, it generates the electricity. This is from a 212 Predator go-kart engine. Flywheel spins around, it generates electricity into this coil, and that's the very electricity that's going to the spark plug. It has the trigger and spark plug out. So the gap on this is very critical, and that's why there's such a discussion on this coil gap. But on ours, it doesn't matter, and that's a pretty big gap. Typically a gap is anywhere from 2 pieces of paper to a credit card, but that's only when we're dealing with something like this. So don't get hung up on the gap. You'll see these aren't adjustable. Don't try to bend them closer because they are pretty far away. Just bolt them in and let it be. That's just sending a signal to release the energy. The energy's made inside here. When you put your fan on, don't mix your little bolts up. Make sure you put the short ones in there so you don't do like I did. Blame China for their crap-ass stators when it was my own damn fault. Make sure they're all the short ones in there like that. I won't bore you with how to put that on and the cover on. Obviously, that's pretty simple. Get done with that, hook our wires up where they go, put your zip ties on, get it all back, and it should work. Hate holiday weekends. Always slowing down my parts.